I would like to do now is bring in our keynote speaker, Amir Cahn, who's the executive director of Smart Water Networks. And Amir and I will just have a quick chat. He's got a keynote plan, but I thought it might be kind of fun to have a quick chat with Amir so we can all get to know Amir a little bit better. Amir, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, there you are. Hey, Amir, great to see you.
Good to see you, yeah.
So, before I get into introductions and kind of, you go on to your thing, are you calling in from London today?
No, actually, Swan is based in London, but I'm currently living in Israel.
Oh, right. Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
so,
yeah. So you folks, international conference, we have brought to you today. Thank you, Amir. So, I know that you just wrapped up your big event. The Swan just had its 10th annual, I believe, right? How was it? How'd it go?
Yeah, so like this event, we had to switch to a virtual format. It was actually supposed to be in Glasgow, Scotland, which, I was really looking forward to. But it went really well. It was a really global conference. We had over 400 participants from 32 countries. And the theme was really moving beyond data to value creation. So it was really a good event, lots of interesting panels, keynotes. But I think now is kind of the new norm of going to virtual events.
Yes. What were the key takeaways of your event?
Yeah, so I think there were a lot. I think the biggest aspect is that even though it was a technology conference, that people are really key in terms of getting them on board, making sure that they're part of the process. Because if you have innovative solutions, but people aren't using them or not using them correctly, they're really, not working. So I think that was a big takeaway, and really just hearing the different global perspectives, I think was really interesting. We had utilities from Singapore, Spain, talking about their best practices.
So I don't know if I'm going to be cutting into your talk here, but how many is it a member-based organization, Swan? Can you tell us a bit about what Swan is and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So Swan is a global nonprofit, and like I said, we're based in the UK, and we're really the leading global hub for the smart water and wastewater sectors. So we bring together key players from around the world to just really accelerate the use of these data-driven solutions. So as a nonprofit, we have an annual conference, we have different regional alliances, also produce our own research, but it's really become a central source for people interested in learning more about smart water and wastewater.
Excellent, wonderful, good. I think but you're a West Coaster by birth, I think. Growing up.
Yeah, you can hear I don't have like a strong accent. I actually grew up in outside Seattle. In Redmond, Washington. A lot of people know Redmond because that's where Microsoft is based.
Yes.
But yeah, really nice place to grow up, surrounded by greenery, lakes. So definitely if you like the outdoors, it's a good place.
And how is it you're now in Israel? How did that sort of?
Yeah, so actually I have family here.
Okay.
So basically about 8 years ago, I finished my graduate studies at Indiana University, and I focused on water resource management. And Israel is known for a lot of innovative water solutions. So I came out here to work, and then that's how I kind of came across Swan. So I guess the family and work related, yeah.
Got it. Very good. So wait, is Swan membership based? I don't know if I caught that.
Yeah. So Swan is also membership based. It's really a mix. I have a slide I'll show kind of like it's really like a mix of large companies, startups, utilities. So really like the full spectrum.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah. Well, good. I think I think we may as well get going on this. I think what I'd like to do, given you've got your time, I would like to ask maybe some questions at the tail end of what you have prepared, so we don't trip over ourselves with anything more I may ask that you've got in your presentation. So just a quick introduction. Let me do a quick introduction to you, Amir. So Amir Khan, he joined Swan in 2013. And again, Swan is short for the Smart Water Networks. And he's going to be talking on digital transformation, let it flow. But he joined Swan in 2013 and has been instrumental in growing the organization into the leading global hub for smart water sector. Throughout his time, he has helped engage members, develop in-depth research reports, and create innovative tools such as the Swan Interactive Tool and Swan Research Portal. Amir has also helped launch and grow regional SWAN alliances in the Americas, Asia Pacific, and Europe. You've been busy in 8 years, I got to tell you. Before joining SWAN, he completed a dual master's degree in environmental science and public affairs from Indiana University. In conjunction with SWAN, Amir is now pursuing a PhD focused on the impact of data as a service model on water and wastewater management. Lots going on, Amir. All right, take it away.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so I guess you can just maybe show, you don't have to cut to the slides yet. So I want to first just thank you for the opportunity to be here and to speak to you all. It's really a pleasure. And I also want to just take a moment to thank all the frontline workers from utilities who are really working 24/7 to ensure that we have clean and safe water. So today in my presentation, I want to focus on some practical examples of digital transformation. Looking first, what are we transforming? How do you define what is a smart water network? Then looking at some global utility examples. And finally, what are some key trends that I think are going to really shape the industry? So before even COVID hit, we were facing really the perfect storm, driving utilities to adopt digital solutions. We have water scarcity, aging infrastructure, tightening budgets, and at the same time, rising customer expectations. And it is also, we've seen really a rise in better and affordable solutions. So I've been in the industry for 8 years now, and I remember in 2013, really utilities were questioning if they can trust data. And now you have utilities who are really taking it a step further, adopting AI solutions, digital twins, so really advanced solutions. So you're really moving from the early adopters to, I would say, the early majority. And this is not really a process that happens overnight. It's really gradual. And I would say it's top down, and it also requires culture change. So with that, you can show the slides. Just wanted to give a quick intro first. Thanks. So just some, So basically today I want to talk about, like Scott said, looking at digital transformation and letting it flow. And I'm Amir Cahn. I'm the executive director of SWAN, the Smart Water Networks Forum. And if you want to go to the next slide. Thanks. So I think recently we've seen this kind of data explosion in the number and types of sensors that are out there. The frequency data is collected. Sometimes it's overwhelming. And the question is, how do you really churn all this data into actionable information? So that's where SWAN, the Smart Water Networks Forum, comes in. So I mentioned before, we're really this leading global hub, and our members are a mix of utilities from all over the world, large companies, startups, academics. Really, you can say it's from idea to pipe, the full spectrum. And so I mentioned what we do before, but now if you go to the next slide, I want to really highlight what is a smart water network. So in reality, there's no one good definition. So SWAN created a 5-layer architecture model, which is really useful, and it's cited around the industry. So the first layer is the physical layer, and this is something that every utility has. It's the pipes, the valves, the reservoirs. It's not smart, but you need it. The second layer is when you start getting intelligent, and that's your sensing and control layer. So you can measure things like flow, pressure, water quality, customer demand. The third layer is how do you relay all this information? So you have technologies like satellite, radio, GPRS. The fourth layer is when you start getting pretty intelligent, and that's how do you visualize what's going on in your network? So you have technologies like a SCADA system, GIS, dashboards. And the fifth layer, the most advanced layer, we call it the data fusion and analysis layer, basically integrates information from the below 4 layers and provides things like real-time control, predictive analytics, hydraulic modeling. So when you think about a smart water network, it's not just one solution, but really an architecture. And it's really important to realize that you're not expected to optimize your entire network. It's really going by what are your key challenges, how can you address them, and realizing that you don't just jump to level 5. It's really a long-term process and something that you need long-term planning. So if you go to the next slide. Thanks. So what I showed, the Swan layer model, is very technology driven, but it can also be used for investment decisions. So one example of this is one of our longtime members, Anglian Water in the UK, basically took our layers and added 2 more layers to it, informed decision-making and outcomes. And they use this to map existing smart water solutions, if they've come across something else, if it fits in their architecture, and really to frame their investment decisions. So thanks. If you go to the next slide. So really, what are we talking about? What is a digital transformation, and why is it so important that we understand and embrace it? And for that, I want to borrow a great definition I heard from Megan Glover, co-founder and CEO of 120 Water. So Megan gave a keynote at the Swan Annual Conference a month ago, and she defined digital transformation as the integration of digital technology into all areas of a business, fundamentally changing how you operate and deliver value to customers. It's also a culture change that requires organizations to continually challenge the status quo, experiment, and get comfortable with failure. So I know these last 3 things are not really popular in the water industry, challenging the status quo, experimenting, and getting comfortable with failure. But now is a time where technology is not a nice-have, it's a must-have, and utilities need to adapt to really stay relevant. For example, many customers compare their customer service from utilities to their credit card companies. So there has to be that data-driven analysis. So if you go to the next slide, I want to now give some great utility examples of how do you really go about this? How do you digitally transform your utility? Starting with Guelph in Montreal, Guelph, Canada, and we heard a great presentation in a Swan workshop 2 years ago in Montreal, comparing taking on a digital project to selling lemonade. So you can think that sometimes, it's only for the new kids. You might need to borrow some resources from mom and dad. It could taste awful, but other times you can create something really neat and useful and learn a lot of great things along the way. So now you can actually just cut the slides. I can go back to video. So thanks, Scott. So with that, I want to really go into some global examples of what makes a successful digital transformation. And really, I think you can break it down into 3 key lessons. So the first lesson is, how can you create a space for innovation? So really encouraging people to think outside the box. And this is really important because you need to do this to really disrupt your business. So a few examples of that. One is in Australia, in Queensland Urban Utilities, and they have something called an innovation lounge. So I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with that, but basically the idea is that a CEO of the utility meets with frontline workers to really understand what their challenges are and hear suggestions from them. Another example is in Washington Suburban Sanitation Committee in district in Maryland in the US. And they have an Office of Innovation and Research. And the goal of this office is to really dedicate finding process solutions using data solutions. And I think one of the best examples, I want to give a shout out to Moulton Nagel Water District and June and her team, really creating an open culture. And June also spoke at our annual conference, and she described technology as a mindset, which I think is really key. A second really important lesson is, how do you build that commitment? Getting frontline workers to really buy in. And this is probably one of the most challenging things to do, because people are really set in their ways. So one of the great quotes I heard from the Swan conference was from a Portuguese utility. The CEO said, "People don't reject their own ideas." So there's a lot of wisdom in this statement, because you really need to create that buy-in and have people feel like they're part of the process. Another example is in Brazil, a large utility which has workshops for non-technicians, and they want to show what are the financial gains that can be achieved. And they also come up with business plans just for non-technicians. So when you talk about how do you bring in this commitment, it really involves finding the people that have the same pain points and those people that can be your internal champions to really push this digital transformation across. And finally, how do you bring this all together? How do you ensure those tangible outcomes? So I mentioned angling water using the Swan layers. Another example, which is great, is DC Water. So they really encourage open communication, and they have a reward and recognition system, and really having structure without bureaucracy. And when you get down to it, one of the most important lessons is be willing to fail, because there's always going to be unexpected outcomes. And the main question is, how are you going to deal with those? Are you going to just stop your project, or are you going to really adapt along the way? And another example is just finding great resources that are out there with different organizations. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel, start from scratch, learning from different examples around the world. So I mentioned that I also want to focus on some key trends, which I think are going to really shape the industry going forward. One is a scary buzzword, but I'm going to try to simplify it, called data as a service. And what this is, it's just an outsourcing model. So I mentioned one of the challenges of having risky digital transformation. So this is a model where all the risk is shifted to the technology provider. They're responsible for installing and maintaining sensors or meters, and a utility just pays for the data that they want to receive. So this is a really critical business model, because utilities often have challenges with data quality, high O&M costs, and oftentimes just pitching the business case. So this really simplifies things. Another buzzword that I also want to try to simplify, which I think is really trending around the world, is a digital twin. So a digital twin, a way to think about it, is just a mirror image of your network. So creating an exact replica of what's going on. And this is different from a model in that it's not using projections, but really gathering data from lots of different sources and providing real-time insights. So an example of this is that we had a Swan webinar a month ago on digital twins, and one of the presenters was City of Salem, Oregon, and they actually use digital twin to detect algae blooms. So it really can be applied to the entire life cycle. And this, how they do that is they base it on real-time water quality and weather data. And lastly, the third trend is really, how do we engage this next generation? How do we get them to work in the water sector? And now it's even more critical time with what's going on and the need for remote workers. And I think young generation can really thrive in this environment. How we can maybe create new positions for them, flexible work, attract them with data science positions. And at the same time, how do we maintain all that existing knowledge with the people that are retiring? So Scott, if you want to just pull up those last slides. I'm now just going to go over some quick resources that Swan has created, which are free to use. So first is a webinar we have on August 25th on data as a service. It's a free to attend. I'll put the link in Slack. And you can hear real life case studies from water and wastewater management. If you go to the next slide. Another example is that we have a digital twin work group. And one of the things they developed is an architecture to simplify what a digital twin is. So you can see here, it really expands from the physical system to the user experience. But this is a great reference, and it can be cited around the industry really as a a standard. And lastly, if you go to the last slide, we also have a young professional working group. And this is comprised of leading young professionals and students from around the world. And their goal is to really draw in other young professionals to work in the sector. So they just had their first workshop. They're also developing a mentorship program. So I really encourage, if you're interested, you're a young professional, to check this out. I'll also post it in Slack. But if you want to look at the last picture, so my last slide is how do we challenge the status quo? And I gave some different examples of digital transformation, but really it's how do we challenge the status quo in this critical time, and how do we reinvent our water future? So with that, thank you for inviting me. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the event, and happy to answer any questions.
Amir, thank you very much. Fantastic. You guys are doing a lot of great stuff out there. We do have some questions for you. I had one, if you don't mind, I'll just kick off with one that I had as you were walking along there. And we've heard this data as a service, energy as a service. There's a lot of that going on out there. I'm just wondering what kind of adoption you're seeing out there for this new model.
Yeah, so that's a really great question. I think it depends. Like it's being applied on the wastewater and the water sector. So for water, it's more common, I would say, for smart metering contracts, but also for water quality monitoring. And for the wastewater side, the applications it's more used for is for like combined sewage overflow monitoring, and sometimes total system operations. And I wouldn't say it's being widespreadly used, but actually I'm doing a PhD on this topic to just try to understand it more, because I do think it can be a game changer. So there are some utilities using it more and more, but I think more needs to be understood is the kind of the short answer.
Agreed, and same with the other as a services that are kind of evolving now. I agree. There's lots of risk that is sort of unquantified at this time too. So, but thank you for that. I think I have another question here from our audience here, and this is actually a question that I would ask. How do we engage to learn from other global utilities?
Yeah, so that's a really good point, because I don't think you need to be limited by the utilities or solutions in your backyard. There's a whole wide range. One, I think, is organizations such as Swan, because we're trying to bring people together to learn from best practices. So we have alliances, one in the Americas, combining North and South America, but also Europe and Asia Pacific. And each of these alliances is really gathering best practices. So we do have some great free resources, but also as membership, there's also other resources you can kind of tap into. But really, I think that's a critical question. And how do you look outside your backyard to find out what's out there and learn from other utilities?
Other utilities, and then in that same vein, are you engaging and bringing together that public-private partnership? Is that, obviously that's part of the thrust as well. Yeah,
so that's also really critical, because a lot of times when you get back to the risk element of it, you can simplify the risk if you do a public-private partnership. So utility and a solution provider are really working together. So I think one of the interesting things about Swan, too, other organizations do this as well, is that it's not just utilities or solution providers. We really want to bring everyone to the table, also including universities, to hear their perspectives.
Excellent. Yeah, for sure. So something else that just was pointed out to me, and you're doing you're doing some work on technology adoption and sending out a short survey. And so I will take a moment at this point to point out to all attendees to take a look at your chat. If you haven't pulled up chat so far this event, there is a link that you can go to. So it's a short survey from Amir, and it only takes about 5 to 10 minutes. And you'll receive the final copy of the global results. It's all confidential, all anonymous. So I would encourage all you attendees, please go ahead and fill out that very brief survey that Amir has sent out. Thank you for that, Amir.
Amir, thank you, and also thanks, Drew.
Yeah, Drew. Yeah, that came from Drew. Any final closing comments that you'd like to make, Amir, before we move on?
No, I would say just now is such a critical time, and I think we're really at the tipping point. And U.S. utilities really can be the leaders in digital transformation. I think some of the early adopter countries are really more in Spain, UK, Australia. but I'm seeing more and more US becoming leaders in this field. And I think there's just a lot to learn and collaborate on. And now is just really a critical time to do so.
Yeah, I completely agree. And Amir, on behalf of Sustain Southern California, I would certainly love to be a part of it. I know that the California Data Collaborative is probably already involved with it, and Molten Lake Water District, other partners, and various other people listening to this and viewing us just now. Thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to future collaboration.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thanks.